Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. Liberating us from decline. That's the focus of tonight's angle. The scene at the White House today was something to behold. You had steel workers, pipe fitters, auto workers, and mechanics, the people who make American industry run. They were gathered in the Rose Garden to watch President Trump announce and sign his executive order that aims to make trade fair again. And we were there to watch it all unfold.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
And President Trump announced reciprocal tariffs on virtually every major exporting country in the world, calculated by adding the foreign nation's tariffs plus the value of any trade barriers that they have in place. Kind of ingenious. And then, in turn, we charge them half of that amount.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt.
He also addressed what I call the myth perceptions about tariffs peddled by his critics. Now, how many times have you heard that a tariff is a tax? But of course, that's facile thinking. Even if foreign manufacturers try to pass on some of their price hikes to consumers, you got to consider the broader picture.
Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America.
And I have to give a great shout out to my great friend Pat Buchanan, who back in, decades ago, but also recently in 2019, put it best. He said a tariff is a tax, but its purpose is not just to raise revenue, but to make a nation economically independent of others and to bring its citizens to rely upon each other rather than on foreign entities. Again, the word independent is really key. Now, when I was a little kid, almost nothing we bought, from toys to TVs, were made outside the United States. I still have my Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls. Believe it or not, I'm going to give them to my kids' someday. They were all made in the USA. And even clothes. My class spirit shirt from college, made in the USA. But then globalization meant that we made fewer things, lost millions of jobs, all so we could buy more of everything, from electronics to pet products, at a lower per-piece cost. And if we learn nothing else from the COVID nightmare, it should be that we need to reshore the manufacturing of our critical supply chain. The President talked about this today: PPE, antibiotics, other pharmaceuticals, many of them made in China. Now, another myth that Trump is starting, that Trump is like starting a big trade war. Well, the truth is we've been in the midst of a trade war for almost 50 years now and losing it badly. The trade deficits speak for themselves.
81% of the cars in South Korea are made in South Korea. 94% of the cars in Japan are made in Japan. Toyota sells 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the United States, and General Motors sells almost none. Ford sells very little. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. Such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk.
You bet it has. A lot of Americans don't even know those facts. It was very educational to listen to the president today. And for all the tough talk on the global scene, key countries are already beginning to see the light.
Let's sit down and discuss this, because it's just going to hurt American jobs.
Do you think it's fair that you have tariffs on a whole number of products?
That's right. And we'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off.
Does President Trump know that you'd be prepared to do that?
He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're willing to take these tariffs off like in the next minute if he said he's taking their tariffs off.
Okay, we're waiting. Now, the bottom line is any economic hit we collectively take is temporary and should not be seen in isolation.
Apple is going to spend $500 billion. NVIDIA, a hot company, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. Johnson & Johnson, great company, $55 billion. Eli Lilly, $27 billion. Meta, CMA, CGM, $20 billion. General Motors, GE Aerospace, Honda, Nissan, Hyundai are all putting in billions and billions of dollars.
Now, one of my favorite moments of the day came early on when Trump brought up one of the UAW workers to speak.
I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the Metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized. And Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. In 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
Now, that was just a beautiful moment. The World Trade Organization was founded in 1995, 30 years ago. We allowed China to join the WTO in 2000. So the free traders, purists, have had their way for most of that time. And we know how it worked out. 5 million manufacturing jobs lost as the outsourcers and the foreign companies got rich. Trump said this today. Look, I campaigned on this. The entire 2024 campaign, he told the voters that this is what he was planning to do, to make America great again by ending the great foreign ripoff of America. And now? He deserves a chance to implement this program and demonstrate to the voters that it can work. So Republicans, I know you're watching, don't even think about blocking this on Capitol Hill. And the courts, they should not be enjoining this either. Let's see how the markets settle out over the next 6 months. Let's see how other countries and their major companies react. 5 American presidents helped dig us into this trade deficit hole that we currently find ourselves in, and only one, Donald Trump, had the guts to try to dig us out. And that's the angle.
Happy Liberation Day.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
Today, Donald Trump fundamentally changed the country as we know it. This is the biggest shift in economic policy since World War II, when we liberated Europe and Asia. 47 says we're now liberating ourselves from globalization.
Our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen. We have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence.
After we saved Europe from Hitler and Asia from the Emperor, we created a free trade system to help the Allies' economies recover. And they'd help us contain communism. And life was great for American families. Wives didn't have to work if they didn't want to. You could own a nice home, have a big family, afford college on a decent salary, and your kids could have a better life than you. The United States finally won the Cold War, gave birth to globalization, and then other countries, even our allies, took advantage of us, took advantage of a system we designed to save and protect them. China, a country we basically created, became an absolute menace, and American multinationals conspired to ship jobs and factories overseas and decimated the middle class. If you're one of those workers of the last 40 years, free trade basically destroyed your life. Look at this chart. The top 50% of income earners, especially the top 10%, accumulated a massive amount of wealth. But the other half of the country, the bottom 50% of earners, have been suffocating at the bottom. The American dream has been dying, and politicians said there's nothing they could do about it.
Some of those jobs of the past are just not going to come back, that he's going to bring all these jobs back. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? What are you going to do? There's no answer to it. He just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, how exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is he doesn't have an answer. But they're going to have to retrain for the jobs of the future, not the jobs of the past.
Mr. Hope and Change is like, sorry, I'm the most powerful man in the world, but there's nothing I can do. Washington's done nothing for 40 years, except open the borders, let industry leave, and spend, spend, spend. Could it be that there was a magic wand this whole time, and Barack just didn't know how to use it?
Somebody said, well, what would you do? What can you do? So easy. I drop a 25% tax on China. And you know, I said to somebody that it's really the messenger. The messenger is important. I could have one man say, we're going to tax you 25%. And I could say another, listen, you mother, we're going to tax you 25%.
Trump's been talking about winning trade wars since the 90s. He raised tariffs in his first term, and we had the highest wage growth in 50 years, a manufacturing renaissance, and a hot stock market. Oh, and no inflation. And this term, he's going even bigger.
China, first row. China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. We're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%. And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that Oval Office.
Americans have been demanding fair trade for years. So if other countries tax our products, we're just going to tax theirs. But Trump's giving everybody a little bit of a discount. 10% tariff across the board, and then just a cut under what they charge us. That's a negotiation tactic. Get other countries to drop their tariffs to where we have them, and then it's equal. That's called fair trade. But we're going to fight harder against foreign cars. Trump announcing a 25% tariff on all autos from other countries, and the workers love it.
I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized. And Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%.
If you care about the forgotten men and women of this country, if you care about restoring the American dream, Trump says you got to be all in on the trade war. But since he's the general of the war, Democrats who claim they represent workers are against it.
Donald Trump is preparing to take a sledgehammer to the American economy by preparing a tsunami of tariffs on all sorts of goods Americans purchase every day. A tsunami of tariffs. Let's be clear. Donald Trump's tariffs are a tax hike on American families.
Wall Street money put Schumer in the Senate, so he's just a puppet. Schumer and company drove up prices to 40-year highs. They've been raising taxes for decades. The man who was complicit in hijacking 100,000 American factories and losing 5 million jobs overseas can shut up, with all due respect. He destroyed American industry. That's why we call it the Rust Belt. That's why Trump was elected twice, to stop Schumer's gang from carving this country up. The media says Americans can't afford tariffs. We can't afford not to have tariffs. We created a monster in China. They dump cheap products here. They steal our secrets. They poison us with drugs. And they killed 1 million Americans with a virus. Trade policy should align with foreign policy. The pandemic proved this country isn't even self-sufficient. We have to start making our medicine here. And if we want to build ships and icebreakers, they have to be built with American steel, not cheap subsidized steel dumped here from China. And if we're going to win the AI arms race, we can't rely on Taiwan for semiconductors. We got to make the chips here. If we don't protect our economy, we can't protect our national security, and we can't protect American lives.
The United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, and electronics. We used to dominate the field, and now we import it all from different countries. A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency.
America used to be an industrial powerhouse. It's how we won World War II. We beat the Germans and the Japanese on opposite sides of the planet at the same time. And what made us such an industrial powerhouse were tariffs. Is America an industrial powerhouse anymore? No. We can't win two wars at the same time anymore. So in order to rebuild, we need to have protection from foreign predators. And our trading partners and neighbors need us more than we need them. Canada was just playing a silly little game of chicken until they realized Trump was serious. And now they're announcing they'll lower their tariffs if we lower ours.
We'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off. We are not the problem, Andrew. Do you know the problem is? China's the problem. We have all the critical minerals that our great neighbors need. We have the energy that our great neighbors need. We don't want tariffs. He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're willing to take these tariffs off like in the next minute if he said he's taking their tariffs off.
Mexico says they won't go tit for tat on tariffs with Trump. Israel's removed all tariffs on American products. Vietnam just cut duties on gas and cars. The world got called out, and they're starting to fall in line. $3 trillion in private investments poured into this country since Trump announced the trade war. And that's more money than Biden spent on chips, infrastructure, and the Green New Deal combined. And he spent your money. And what did he build? Nothing. Build back better? Never happened. Bidenomics, with open borders, outsourcing, and record spending, was throttling this country to the brink of a recession. This administration says they're rescuing the economy from a recession. Well, the stock market can't get a handle on any of this because they don't know if Trump's tariffs are long-term or just a negotiating tactic. And companies need to plan years ahead. But Wall Street's going to be fine. And everyone's investments are going to be fine long-term. This is an administration focused on Main Street, not Wall Street. The same people complaining about tariffs never complained once when the middle class got savaged by other countries.
In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Always, fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong.
Fair trade isn't a silver bullet. It's a part of a bigger package. Tax and regulation cuts, cheap energy, border security, DOGE, and spending cuts if Congress can get its act together. Tomorrow, when you look at the Dow, it might not feel so liberating, but neither did the day after D-Day. Eventually, we won.
And welcome to Hannity, and we are loaded up tonight with a ton of news. It is Liberation Day in America, and tonight we will shatter the myths surrounding Donald Trump's American First economic vision and something called reciprocal tariffs that are well earned by other countries. We'll also shine a bright light on the Democratic Party, which has no vision at all whatsoever. As we all know by now, they do really hate insurrections. They value democracy. That's what they say. Until, of course, they lose an election. And then the radical left, well, they're completely silent on domestic terrorism. The same Democrats who feigned outrage for years over January 6th. And now they're perfectly fine with terrorism against Teslas, Tesla dealerships, charging stations. And they revere an alleged cold-blooded killer named Luigi Mangione. Wait till you hear tonight's update. Also coming up. And in our other news of the day segment, Alec Baldwin, the king of hate and rage himself, is once again in a state of hysteria. We've got the tape to prove it. And also, Ron Klain, really? Joe Biden's loyal chief of staff now stabbing his boss in the back. Wow. Also tonight, a dangerous storm is ripping through the South and the Midwest. It is causing flash floods, massive tornadoes, as you can see there on your screen. We will have live coverage throughout the night. Our prayers are with the people in that area. But we begin with the beautiful White House Rose Garden, where President Trump earlier today ushered in a new era of American prosperity. Take a look.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen. We have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years. But it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. If you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America. All of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs, I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers, don't manipulate your currencies. They manipulate their currencies like nobody can even believe, which is a bad, bad thing and very devastating to us, and start buying tens of billions of dollars of American goods.
And he said we can no longer unilaterally, economically surrender. Now, let's be clear about one thing. We're supposed to be the land of the free, the home of the brave, right? America didn't just magically become the single greatest country God ever gave man by allowing other countries to walk all over us, rip us off, and take advantage of us. And now, thanks to President Trump, well, the world's free ride is now over. Now, free trade is a two-way street. The president wants free and fair trade, but they don't want free and fair trade. While the U.S. imposed low or zero tariffs from products around the world, American exports were heavily taxed, throttled, and even blocked altogether. We have been ripped off by countries all over this world for decades, friends and foes alike. Those days are thankfully now, as of tonight, over. Look at your screen. Here are the new reciprocal tariffs for each country around the world compared to the tariffs that they already impose on our products, American products. On the blue column, well, this is what American businesses faced when trying to enter a foreign market. A nearly 40% tax from the European Union. I thought they were our friends. 50%, Japan, South Korea, India, 61%, Switzerland, 72%, Thailand, 64%, Indonesia. Canada absolutely screws our dairy farmers and our meat producers. That's not very neighborly, if you ask me. And the list, we'll keep scrolling. It goes on and on. Make no mistakes. These are massive, massive taxes and markups designed to make American products uncompetitive. They're hurting our ranchers. They're hurting our farmers. They're hurting our manufacturers. They're hurting our auto industry. Look, for example, at the top of the list, China's tariff against American imports, it's 64%. That's not free and fair trade. And by the way, How is this fair in any way? Why are we making China and all these other countries rich? We can make all of these products here in America. And don't you want a president that's advocating for and defending American workers, American businesses, American products around the globe? All these countries want access to the, 360 million Americans? They want access to our market so they can make more money. And by the way, spare me all the hand-wringing. Well, what about Canada and the European Union? They're our friends. We spend $1 trillion a year, your money, to protect them from worldwide threats. We eclipse all of their NATO spending combined. We spend billions in research, development on state-of-the-art weapons that they end up using. We provide that to them. When Ukraine was attacked, we provided the majority of the funding and the weapons to fight back against Russia. Hundreds of billions of your dollars. When a suspected spy balloon was over Canada, it was American planes that shot it down. Why? Because Canada's aging planes, they couldn't get altitude high enough. And just recently, when European trade routes were blocked off by the Houthi rebels, well, we were the ones that delivered a massive blow to Iran's proxy. It looks like we might be giving another one. And it's not just defense that we're providing. Here's one of the reasons why our health care costs are so high. The U.S. develops almost all new drugs, all new medical technology, all at a massive cost, while other countries with socialized medicine, they steal it, they hand it out for free, and you pay full price. That sound fair? But it's somehow wrong to tax these countries that are putting massive taxes, tariffs on us, the EU, Canada. What, we're supposed to just take this? At some point, this free ride must end. It's ending. They should never get a free ride forever. But the good news, once and for all, to our international friends, there are two ways to make these tariffs go away. One, end the tariffs on our products. That's free and fair trade. Two, make your products in the United States like Hyundai's doing, Mercedes is doing, BMW, Toyota, Nissan. Take a look at your screen. There are many other massive companies that are now making products right here in America, providing Americans high-paying career jobs, and they're setting up shop in the near future. Even Rolls-Royce is thinking about building engines here. To put it bluntly, those are jobs for you, the American people, for the hardworking Americans, for the people that make this country great, and a more competitive product with zero tariffs. And of course, Democrats, the legacy media mob, they're totally distraught, as usual. If the dog bites, the bee stings, you're feeling sad, you blame Trump. And the New York Times actually published a sob story about a Chinese factory owner whose business is now quieter than it should be. That's complete Adam bullshit. I said it the right way. And meanwhile, Hakeem Jeffries is all but rooting for a recession. Listen.
Republicans are crashing the American economy in real time and driving us to a recession. This is not Liberation Day, it's Recession Day in the United States of America.
Cheering for failure, the party that once at least pretended to care about Americans and American workers, while also ignoring inflation for 4 years, now suddenly uninterested in American jobs while deeply concerned with the costs of foreign goods? Take a look.
Now, he argued in a White House setting that this is a good thing for the United States. Called it even at one point a Rose Garden type celebration. Many others view it differently. And many sectors of our economy are bracing for an impact that has been universally described as likely negative for you, a regular consumer or taxpayer.
The president is risking a recession with this national sales tax he calls tariffs.
Tariffs are just another tax, which is very regressive. It's just a sales tax.
It's now official. The Democratic Party, the legacy media mob, they no longer represent the hardworking men and women in this country that make this country great. It is a party that is filled to the brim with coastal elites in San Francisco, L.A., New York, D.C., Illinois. We'll include them. And by the way, people that likely never got their hands dirty, have never seen the inside of a factory. Most of them probably don't even know how to use a lawnmower, much less sharpen the blades. But maybe, just maybe, they'd be willing to just, maybe listen to even Biden's Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, who had this to say about the impact of tariffs on the American consumer, the opposite of what Democrats are saying now.
There have been some experts, some groups, the National Retail Federation among them, who've expressed concerns that it will be U.S. consumers who eventually end up paying for these tariffs. As you know, polling shows that rising prices are voters' biggest concern right now. So I'd ask you to speak directly to them. Will American consumers bear the cost of these tariffs?
I don't believe that American consumers will see any meaningful increase in the prices that they face.
For once, Yellen was right, but this is about more than prices for consumers. Pat Buchanan pointed out in 2019, quote, tariffs are the taxes that made America great. The Tariff Act, signed into law by George Washington, 1789, protected American manufacturers. It created a new thriving industrial sector in the Northeast in this country. The Founding Fathers also enacted the Tariff of 1816. That allowed Americans to generate its own textile market, all but blocking out competition from Great Britain. And in the early 1900s, a new tariff allowed multiple presidents to slash income taxes, which ignited the Roaring '20s. Meanwhile, the infamous Smoot-Hawley tariff is always blamed by the left for the Great Depression. One problem: the stock market crashed well before the tariff became law. And as Buchanan pointed out, mismanagement from the Federal Reserve was the real villain of the Great Depression, and not a tariff that wasn't even in effect. And remember this, according to Buchanan, a tariff is a tax, but its purpose is not just to raise revenue, but to make a nation economically independent of others and to bring its citizens to rely upon each other rather than foreign entities. Let me sum it up. America first. That is exactly why today is Liberation Day. It's a day that will be remembered as a turning point and the start, I hope, for every American of a new golden age of American wealth and exceptionalism.
So they say hindsight is 20/20. And if anybody in the media sees out of his hind end, it's Joe Scarborough. He was once a Republican in Congress, but will be remembered as the worst thing to happen to Florida since Ron Jeremy toured the villages. I know. But what I like most about Scarborough is his honesty. Well, that and his dime slot hillbilly eyes. Here he is on April Fool's Day, no less, talking about what a disaster Joe Biden was as president.
We always look back in retrospect and think things were a certain way, just because it's the way the media at the time defined it. You know, I remember after Biden's shockingly bad presidential debate, that's when, like, the history books were starting, you know, you could just see that was going to be the reason why he was pushed out of the race and he was doing bad.
Oh, you could just see that was going to be the reason, because there were no reasons before the debate.
No.
Sorry, Joe. Saying the debate was like a shocking reason for Biden's downfall is like saying, oh, I didn't know Hunter Biden was a problem until I saw his artwork. And what a convenient opinion to suddenly come up with that now that Biden is long gone. But that's what you get when the media is interviewing the media without addressing the diseased and dying elephant in the room, the media. Scarborough is talking with the authors of a new book that details just how Biden really was, how bad he was. And Scarborough acts as if he knew it the whole time. But it wasn't that long ago when Scarborough said this about the commander in coma.
He's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically.
Cogent? I think he meant pungent. Keep yakking, you grifter.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Of course it wasn't the truth, you bozo. Which is why you said it. This guy has always been more full of than a cage full of chimps mainlining Metamucil. Here he is in 2023 with the same line at Caca del Toro about Biden's supernaturally keen focus. You know, I bet it'll wake you up when you're asleep at 8:30 at night.
It'll wake me up when I'm asleep at 8:30 at night, because Meek and I, of course, wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and I'll just go, hello, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And about an hour later, he will aggressively and very effectively give me point by point by point about how my op-ed was flawed.
First of all, what kind of loser has to get up at 4:30 in the morning? So he relays an anecdote about Biden calling him up to talk politics. He left out the part that Biden thought he was talking to Amelia Earhart. But does anybody really believe that story, seriously? Biden didn't have the mental capability to dissect his own pork chop for dinner, let alone dissect a Joe Scarborough op-ed. He couldn't debate a speak and spell, which is why they told him the speak and spell was the nuclear football. And Scarborough actually wanted us to believe Joe was still awake at 8:30 at night. By then, he was already in his cryogenic chamber, dreaming about his uncle getting eaten by cannibals, overcoming oil cancer, and Corn Pop's love for hairy legs. Remember this stinky pile of crap from February 2024 after special counsel Robert Hur declined to pursue criminal charges against Biden? Hur said Biden willfully possessed classified docs, but it was okay because he's an old man with a bad memory. Well, the Dems exploded with rage at this obvious truth, and this hack led the attack.
There's so many people that immediately heard these random conclusions, irrelevant conclusions, who, first of all, wondered why in the world he would put that in a report, his neurological assessment of Joe Biden. Why in the world would the Justice Department allow that dicta to be in there? It's gratuitous. Well, and he knows it's gratuitous, and it was bad faith.
Of course, it was also true. If Scarborough got within 200 feet of a polygraph machine, it would burst into flames. But Scarborough couldn't afford to be honest with his audience because the Dems had a big, bad orange man breathing down their necks. So he had to deny Biden's physical and mental decline, which the whole world saw every day. He had to blurt out hostile, fidgety or they wouldn't give him the pills that keep him from turning into a werewolf. His entire grift was so that he could be the last person MSNBC lays off. I mean, it's not like his night job as a butthead impersonator would cover his monthly nut. But now in 2025, when he thinks it's safe, Scarborough has seen the light.
I remember talking to a reporter 3 days before the before the debate, and we were talking about how Biden was starting to fall behind in Minnesota, that Virginia was getting really tight, uncomfortably tight, and Democrats were afraid Biden would even lose New Hampshire. We both said to each other, the funny thing is, like, no matter how Biden does in this debate, people are going to blame the debate for the way the polls are already breaking before the debate.
Wait, you mean the funny thing is that no matter how Biden does in the debate, he's going to be blamed for the polls? No, the funny thing is, if you had just told the truth when it mattered, maybe the Dems would have had time to find a candidate who could actually win an election. Hell, Jimmy Carter was still around at that point. He would have done a better job at that debate. But he didn't, so now you have to lie about your lies. But hey, it could always be worse. Morning Joe could be on a network people watch. All right. Let's welcome tonight's guest. He gives fans something to remember. A terrible experience. Writer and comedian Joe DeVito. Every time I pee, I think of his last name. Actor and comedian Steve Byrne. She's so hot, she fogs her own glasses. Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. And he's the reason for cathedral ceilings. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NWA world champion, tariff. Joe, I don't have goals. But I'm going to make it my goal that we never forget what Joe Scarborough said. Anytime he says something, I'm playing those videos over and over, because How can he switch like this and expect everybody is as dumb as his wife?
Yeah, well.
Yeah, no, she hired him.
Yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, unless his memory's worse than Joe Biden's, he has to know. The way he said, oh, the shock at the debate, the only shock at the debate was when they hit Biden with the defibrillators before they threw him out in front. Everything he said is now, it's incomprehensible that this is the best version. What does the worst version of Joe Biden look like? Is it just a stain on a carpet or a head floating in a jar? It was all, and the anger with which he said it made it incredible. You know, Joe Biden was not calling anyone at 8:30.
No.
He's not calling anyone at 8:30 a.m. all of his calls went forwarded directly to 911 if they're coming from Joe Biden.
Yes. Even the visiting angels, you know, turned off their phones.
Yeah, they sent him the voicemail. So I feel bad in a way for some Democrats, because I don't feel bad for us, because we called this right from the beginning. We knew it was ridiculous. We knew Joe Biden was rotting and declining, right? This sudden decline. Mount Everest doesn't have a sudden decline as this short. And we knew it was garbage, but I feel bad for the people who watch that and now have to say, oh, did we do the same thing he did, where we had to deny what our eyes and ears were telling us because we didn't want to believe it. And they have to live with that. We can gloat.
Yeah, you know, Steve, you're watching this and you're watching the media interview the media, and neither of them admits that they were the problem, that they did the cover-up.
No, well, first off, look, speaking of the media, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. It's so great to see you guys. And you guys...
Cheap applause, Steve.
Cheap applause. Look, I tell you, my good friend Roy Wood Jr. has a show called Have I Got News? And I thought, oh, I'll get on that. I'm on Gutfeld before his show. And it's like, I realized, oh, I'm on Gutfeld before his show because I'm not black enough. You know, the three hosts are black. Roy's black. The co-host, Amber Ruffins, is black. Even the white guy's named Michael Ian Black. Now... But even when my wife and I were watching the debate, and when Biden came walking out, when he was walking, I was like, oh, God. And every time that guy walks, you ever see Star Wars The Phantom Menace when C-3PO's not fully fixed, but he's kind of like met on a wire, he's kind of walking. But even that farewell speech, I watched his farewell speech, and I was like, this speech is sad, it's kind of morose, but what I liked best about his farewell speech was open casket.
Yes.
Too much heat? Too much heat?
I've never had a guest stand up all the time.
You get merch. You guys get merch.
Do I beat him up now for stealing the book?
At cost.
All right, Kennedy. You gotta figure that Morning Joe has got to be a weird place to work right now, because not only were they humiliated.
Are you asking me for intel? Because I've got it. Go ahead.
No, tell me.
Continue.
You know
the question.
she does that research.
Continue with
thing.
your question. I was researching.
No, tell me what you know. Tell me what you know.
Sorry, I have to put my IFB in case our overlords have to tell me to stop talking, which is quite often. It's a miserable place to work. There is more tension among the hosts than is reported. They are on the wrong side of the executives, especially the new president, who was interim president for a while, but now she's like the permanent president. And they had to power up a 500 horsepower turbocharged ass-kissing machine just to keep their jobs because, like Joy Reid, they enjoyed a precipitous decline in their ratings the day after the election because they lied. They tried to ease their viewers' fears. They parroted Kamala's horrible comms team's internal polling, which was completely skewed. And I don't know who they were lying to. Were they lying to keep their jobs?
Yeah.
Were they lying to make Kamala feel better so she didn't completely implode on the campaign trail? Were they lying to Joe and Mika so they could have like a constant propaganda factory? But it is a miracle with, their lack of objectivity that they are still employed.
Yes, but also, Tyrus, it is about pride. Like they were wrong on everything, but they can't admit it because it would destroy themselves. They're too proudful. Is that a word?
Prideful.
prideful to admit they were wrong. Proudful. Proudful?
I felt proudful. I stopped
Yes.
coming with that. I think we all got it.
Yeah. Prideful.
Can I say this? I'm a member of the Proudful Boys. I think I say that.
Knew it.
Yeah, I felt it. I think a couple things. First of all, he should change the name of the show.
Yeah.
To Morning Wood.
Yeah.
Because he's a real like he's a liar. He's an absolute liar. He's never spoke to the president. He never had. No one takes calls or calls him to discuss anything. And he lies so bad that he gets lost in his lies. Because when you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.
Mm-hmm.
When you lie, you have a lot to remember. And he's not good at remembering, which is weird to me because based on the size of his forehead, he should be able to tell what I'm thinking. Like, how the hell do you have a receding hairline and a hairpiece? Like, get it together, bro. And then it's not pride, Greg. It's greed. Mm-hmm. They were doing this because the Democratic Party was cutting checks, which means he was leading the charge. And then they're like, hey, Joe, maybe don't help us so much because he was like, I just got off the phone with him and he's sharper than he's ever been. And they're like, whoa, we're not willing to go that far.
Yeah.
He's the president, ain't even allowed to be around sharp objects. Don't even use that word with him. So they were like, we're going to get speaking events. We're going to get this. We're going to get exclusive interviews. We're going to make a lot of money.
Yes.
So you can't even give him the respectful thing of like, no, it was about trying to see it through. No, they thought they could cash money. And then there was no money. So what did they do? They slid it over to Mar-a-Lago to try to see like, hey, if you could throw us some interviews, we'd be on your team. And the president said, yeah, we're good.
Yeah. All right, that's enough for now. Let's go on to the next block. Up next, Senator Spartacus strikes again.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.